Ready? That the language we speak creates in us a way of being, a way of behaving, a way that is implicit. We don't even think about it. It's almost automatic. And part of that is that we think of this pen as a thing, as an object. And as soon as we have that conception of reality, that reality is made up of things, that creates a concept of power. And it's a concept of power over. For example, I can push this pen around, it cannot push me around, I have power over this pen. And that concept of power over is implicit in our lives. That we live with this concept of power. You get any dictionary and open up a dictionary and read the concept of power, and that's what they're talking about. Now, if we have that concept of power, it creates a certain kind of game. It creates a game of winners and losers. It creates a win-lose game. And most of the cultural games that we are taught from childhood are based on win-lose games. Most of them. That there's a winner and there is a loser. And if we are playing win-lose games, we cannot get 100% of our dreams. By definition. Because a win-lose game is a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game means that there has to be a loser. If someone gets more than 50%, it means someone else is getting less than 50%. That's the nature of the game. And this is built into European culture. In European culture, it's worse than most others, because we also, in European languages, the Indo-European language family, which is the biggest language family in the world, of which English and German and French and Slavic and Hindu and Spanish and Portuguese, they all have this characteristic that they use auxiliary verbs. The auxiliary verbs that these languages use are the verbs to have and to be. To have implies possession. And if you possess something, it's automatically assumed that the possessor has power over what is being possessed. So that reinforces this concept of power over. And to be does it too, because if you use the verb to be, you're describing the essence of something. You're saying that that's what it is. For example, if I say, this is a pen, I'm saying that this has the essence of penness that describes what this is, for once and forever. This is a pen. And I'm going to tell you, this is not a thing. It's not a thing. We have difficulty thinking of it in a different way because of the language we speak. And as I said, the language we speak conditions what we see. So we think of this as a thing. But if I tell you this is not a thing, it means that we need a different way of being able to describe what reality is. If we want to not play win-lose games, if we want to get 100% of what we want, we have to think of the world in a different way. How do we do that? When our language forces us into a win-lose game. Just to show you what happens with win-lose games, and this is really interesting, is that with all of the cultural games we're playing, these win-lose games at the moment, and how ubiquitous, how universal this is in our culture. We send our children to school at the age of 7. In education, you're a success and you're a failure. There's the win-lose game. Okay? In our legal system, when you get caught up in our legal system, Sabina is innocent, but Dirk is guilty. There's another win-lose game. And in health, in our healthcare system, Christiania is sick, but you're healthy. There's another win-lose game. So even in our health model, we're playing the win-lose game. In our government, Monica is the government, but Dietmar is the opposition. There's another win-lose game. And in our economy, Axel is rich, but Franz is poor. Another win-lose game. And these win-lose games are everywhere. Yes, Christiane.
I mean, this is the concept of duality, yeah? It has not only to do with...
Yes, it is a concept of duality, but it's more than that. The duality actually comes from, it's built into the language itself. It's built into the language because we separate in our language between subjects and objects.
And this duality, you have, I mean, just for me to summarize, if I understood it right, you have this concept all over the world, but our language is stronger in that way that we separate between object and subject, and because of this power over concept is stronger.
Is much stronger.
Okay.
And some languages are not based on duality.
Oh, which language could this be?
Some of the North American Indian languages.
Okay.
Some of the languages that people like Franz Boas and Benjamin Lee Whorf have studied in linguistics.
Yes.
Edward Sapir. Okay. These are all early linguists who studied Aboriginal languages. Some of the Aboriginal languages in Australia too are not based on concepts of duality. And it's found amongst a number of indigenous languages, early languages. Duality seems to have been something that grew over a period of time. But we were not originally dualistic thinkers.
Are you sure?
Yeah, and I'll show you why.
No, don't ask why. I just ask, are you sure?
Well, you know, I'm sure, I can't be sure of anything really. But from what I understand, and from what I understand about Australian Aboriginal culture, they're a lot less dualistic than us. And there's some interesting work being done at the moment by Stephen Palmer, James DeMayo, and Malcolm Hollick. These three have been researching the origins of patriarchy. And what they have found is that patriarchal cultures seem to have begun as a result of a period of climate change, about 6,000 to 4,000 BC. And during this period of climate change, there was a shift in the relationship between male and female, in which you begin to see the emergence of very stratified cultures, in which you get a small group of professional soldiers who take over and run the government. And that as a result of this period of climate change, when the professional soldiers took over, what happened, beginning in the Middle East but spreading east and west, you get the sudden appearance of walled cities. Before then, human settlements were unwalled. You get the sudden appearance of walled cities. And you find a huge fall in the status of women. And you see the appearance of institutionalized slavery.
Why is that so?
What these writers suggest is that with this period of climate change, basically the populations in those areas had grown so that they were pushing against the limits of the natural environment. And then the period of climate change meant that a lot of people started to starve. And so the group that could organise itself to attack its neighbours and take the food of the neighbours and turn the neighbours into slaves, they survived. The ones that didn't do that, they were taken over. And that these changes were associated with the rise of patriarchy. It's an interesting theory, and it does explain quite a lot in terms of the origins of dualism, in which you begin to see there's for those people who are interested in exploring dualism, probably the best theorist about dualism is a woman called Val Plumwood. And she suggests that what happens with dualistic thinking, the subject versus object, it creates mutually exclusive categories. So, black and white, good and bad, yes and no, male and female, capitalism and communism, rich and poor, innocent and guilty. And so first of all it creates these mutually exclusive categories. And Val Plumwood says, as soon as you're working with mutually exclusive categories, you're doing violence. She suggests that the violence that happens is because anything that doesn't fit into those categories is excluded. It's what they call the law of the excluded middle. Just to finish, what she then says is that in dualistic thinking, we take one of those categories and make it superior to the other. And so it becomes hierarchical. And this is linked to the appearance of a ruling class that happened, according to Stephen Parker, James LeMayo and Malcolm Hollick, with the rise of the walled cities and the appearance of patriarchal cultures.